clinical mental health counselor, and a CFLE, which is a certified family life educator. I'm also a certified integrated medicine provider for mental health and a couple other certifications, but I love doing family therapy and teaching. I never thought that I would. So I'm a little crazy there. Okay, so communication. Gonna get rid of these off my screen so I can see my own screen. Okay, so I like the basics, right? But if you know me, I go way beyond the basics. So these go fast. There's a ton of material. You'll get the recording, you'll get the PowerPoint, so don't worry about all the material. But in all of my workshops, there's quite a bit. That's just how I do things. So fun stuff goes fast. Thanks for posting that. Okay, so interpersonal communication. So we always have to define. I always have to have clarity first. We have to learn what our definitions are. So this is just a basic definition of communication and the process of exchanging information, ideas, and feelings between two people or more. Okay, so we have to go backwards. Two people or more. So this is why this is so crucial. This is like so much fun because we cannot predict or control what other people do. So, and then I even will take that back. Can we predict what people will do? Some patterns, if you know people really well, you could probably predict about what they'll do, but you never know. Maybe they're different now. Maybe they've changed. Maybe they are going to respond differently to you. So
Listen real fast.
Okay. There. So we look at the information exchange between two people. We look at more than two people. It's verbal, nonverbal. And you've all heard of those kind of things of like what nonverbal is, what verbal is, what in sending and receiving information. So we are humans that really soak in so much between our mirroring neurons, between our senses, between just the energy, right? We absorb that. So we're sending and receiving information a lot more than words. It's just not words anymore, especially we're texting and it's like, okay, we're words. There's just words there. Then if you get it animated, then there might be a little bit more tone to the text. But so exchanging ideas, body language, energy, tone, like I said, 92% is all of that. So we're going to go over some of that, and then we're going to go over some tools and resources. Of course, I put quite a few little handouts in the back of this PowerPoint, so they're just printable, or I usually put my own handouts that I have made, which are lots, are on my own website. And so you can always find more resources there. I'll just put it in the chat that you can print. I have some PowerPoints on there and like just handouts and some other stuff. So if you want to go to that, then you can find more resources and handouts on that. It's paperbackconnections.com, paperbackconnections.com. So that's what we're going to kind of go over today, which is a few other things that get a little bit deep into crucial conversations and crucial confrontations books. Okay, so these are mostly my 10. Okay, I worked on this PowerPoint for many hours because I really did a lot of research, which I do. And I'm a book person. That's why my website's called Paperback Connections. But so lots. So I have my 3 here of just this. So this is not just made up stuff, but this is like, I thought, oh my gosh, you've heard of like some 7 C's of communication. but I have 10 C's, and they're not all just of the original 7 C's. They're just some a lot of what I gathered in a lot of different content. So coordinating, we're going to go over what connection is. Connection's really, really important. I'm going to let this last group of people in. So connection, content, what is the content of the communication, and then the context. And I found those really interesting to separate and to kind of, I guess, compare. And then 5 is like control. What kind of control do we need? What do we need in controlling the conversation? But what kind of control do we have? It's more like us. Like what do we have control over? What's clear and crucial? So we're going to define what's crucial. And then commitment. I find that word really awesome in communication, because we either have to commit to ourselves of what we want and what that communication looks like, and then what the commitment looks like. Are we in it to win it, or to do a win-win? And then we're going to talk about the correspondence of like just corresponding. And then courteous, we should put courteous at the top, but we have to put courteous in there. And then closure. So my 4 C's that I always talk about is clarity. The brain has to have clarity. So 6 is clear. We need clear stuff. We need to know what it is that we want. We need to have clear expectations with that. And then we can connect, and then we have to have control, and then we have to have closure. So those are just what the brain needs. So there's a lot of those in here too. So the brain needs all those things. Now closure is way, way later. I tell people, maybe several sessions of therapy later, you have closure on something. I help people get to closure for sure. It's not that we let things go, or that the trauma is gone, or the hurt is healed. It's not that at all. It's just closure. It's closure for us. So because we can't control closure for other people. So I'm gonna get to coordinate. So really important, before we even get to clear down here is like being courteous, we have to start with all these things. So it's like coordinate. Okay, there is a science to communication. There's a coordination of prepping. So it is very, so you have success. You're building your success to coordinate the communication. So this sounds like a lot. It really does. It's like totally overwhelming. And you'll probably ask some questions, like maybe you guys can write these down or chat things as you have questions along the way. But it's like, what about, we can't coordinate? It's an on-the-spot, quick response that you have to give to somebody, in a hallway, at work, or your kid does something and you have to do a quick thing. This could be 30 seconds of like, hey, can you give me a minute? Let me step inside this other room, or let me give you full attention, or so you can be present. So this is like super important in coordinating, I think. I mean, you can do it very, very quickly, and you don't have to set up these great big rules of how and where you're going to meet and everything. But if you do, and you have time for that, it's essential. So reviewing the steps and present skills and set differences aside, these are all coordinating, but really it's like place, time, coordinating. And we'll get to that too. Okay, so of course there's just little visual of effective communication skills. There's a lot to this. And when I work with couples, I would say about 75% of people come in and say, I'm like, what's your deal? What you here for? And they're like, we need to communicate better. And I love it, right? And I'm like, okay, so that just tells me that you need to connect. So there's a lot more to just communication. So as we all know. So that's why I always jump ahead of myself, because I know it's is connection. So how do we connect? How do we connect the link and be, now that we've kind of set up, okay, we need to have a conversation. We just need to communicate about something, about anything, about it with anybody. So here's the definition from Brene Brown: connection as the energy that exists, okay, between two people or more. Okay, so between people, when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment. So remember our definition about communication. It was receiving and gathering information, and it was about energy between more than one person. So, it, and then this next part, without judgment, that was the, putting differences aside. And when they derive this strength and substance from the relationship, then we can connect. So finding the right time to connect, defining your higher purpose and need, then bid. Okay, so that's huge. I could spend, like I say in every workshop, I could spend an hour just on that statement. So defining your higher purpose, I call it a higher purpose. It's on lots of my handouts. And that's a book from 1973, Road Less Traveled. But higher purpose, what is your higher purpose? I mean, is your higher purpose, for example, when a family is going on a road trip, I say, okay, what's your higher purpose? Let's talk about your higher purpose. Is it to scream at each other and fight and bicker and punch each other in the back seat and have dad pull over and say, get out of the car, we're not going on vacation anymore, and never mind, Disneyland's too far away, we're not going to get there. And your higher purpose goes out the window within 30 minutes of why you're doing something. So we've got to back up and say, okay, wait, when this arises, we're going to have a higher purpose and we're going to have a plan, and then we're going to have a better need. Why are we going to Disneyland, right? And then you bid. So bidding is a Gottman term that you're just going to have to go to John Gottman. I have his book referenced in this one today. But so bidding, all you need to know is bidding is a request, is a thank you, is an opening the door for someone, is a touch, is a text, is, hey, what are we doing for fun tonight? Do you want to go out on a date tonight? I mean, that's a bid. So bidding is extremely important. Now you have, like I said, I could spend a whole hour just on this, but this is really important, but you can look at some other stuff on that. You have two ways basically that you're going to turn toward that bid, or you're going to turn against that bid. And that's actually towards the person, toward the bid or against the bid. So if someone opens the door for you, a complete stranger in the grocery store, and you're like, oh, look at the person, thank you, and you move through the door and you smile at the person, that's a bid. You turn towards that bid that person would open the door. If you just, go through and, you're plowing through and you're not paying attention and you don't, you kind of turn against that bid. So that's a little example. It can be with anyone, or it can be with your daily, with your family, or with, a coworker or a complete stranger. Okay, so let's check in for a minute. Let's see. How do we connect with someone you don't communicate with on the same wavelength? Yeah. So communicating differently. We'll talk about that. Think about, as we go through this, how you can get on the same link, the same page. And I talk about the same page with people constantly. So think of the visual. How do we connect? But then how do we communicate? But first you've got to connect. So if you're not connecting, it's really hard to communicate. So the biggest thing here with trying to get on the same page is find the same book, and then you're going to find the same chapter. Okay. And I know a lot, like I talk about this with parenting. It's like, if you're in different books, holy cow, parenting's not going to work. If you're in different chapters, okay, but you're in the same book, we're getting closer. Same page, yes. Same sentence is what makes a beautiful communication, connection, marriage, partnership, parent-child, boss, employee, whatever. When you're on the same sentence and you can understand each other, and we're going to talk about seeking to understand first, that makes you on the same sentence. I'm never going to get anyone on the same word. So don't worry about it. Yeah, you just that. But think about what it would be like visually to be on the same page with someone that you're communicating with and getting on the same sentence. And that's bidding a little bit. The higher purpose book was, so it's called Road Less Traveled. I could turn around and grab it right there, by Scott Peck. He just talks a lot about balance and higher purpose, and self-discipline and delaying gratification, which I make that list in one of my handouts. So content. So this is just the basic material presented with assertiveness. So these are rules. These are defining the problem. This is like, oh, and I did do a quote about John Gottman's bids on here. I thought it was somewhere. And so peaceful, happiness, satisfaction, material presented. So the content's just the content. So you go, okay, what's the content? So if you went through these lists, we're on number 3, content. What would that look like? What is the defining problem, if there is one? And then the assertiveness part is what I teach a ton of, is assertive training and boundary, boundary coping skills. I feel and I need and I'm willing to do statements. So when I or feel this way, or I need, and then I am willing to do, and those usually go in order that way. And so there's defining the problem and then being assertive, which we're going to talk about. But bids, Dr. John Gottman calls bids the fundamental unit of emotional connection. We have to connect emotionally. We are with our eyes, our sounds, our energy, and we are emotionally connecting the dots. So when we do that, we can have better communication. We have to be able to be connected somehow. And they're gestures between a couple, or between anyone. So he, of course, is a couple specialist of 45 years, but really, as I gave you an example of someone walking through the door and you smiling and saying thank you, and then you grabbing the door for them, okay, again, and you go through the doors together. Just those little gestures. I've had several, I call them kindness gestures the last week or two, and it's amazing how you can connect with a stranger when everyone's in a really deep struggle. We've struggled for several years now in a deep struggle. And so when you connect deeply with a complete stranger, of someone complimenting you, I've always, I really hold those close to my soul when someone compliments me and they're a stranger. I mean, I just had someone say, oh, I really like your glasses, or you look like, I went up to a drive up last week and I had flowers in my car that I picked from my garden, and I have lots of flowers, and I make a bouquet and I was bringing it to work. And the drive up, of course, I'm getting lunch, I'm getting, my fries and my Dr. Pepper or something. And she's like, you look like a really fun person. Those look like really nice flowers. I'm like, yeah, I picked them. And, and it was just like this instant, like, nice bid. She put out a bid and I gave it back to her thinking, oh, I don't need to talk to anybody in the drive up. Right. So it's just those kind of things that can make your day or not, and it's like, wow, the fundamental emotional connection between two people and their verbal and nonverbal clues. You can turn against it or turn towards it. And there's a lot of reasons why we turn against it. And we don't really mean to. It's kind of in our subconscious sometimes. So yeah, let's see. Checking in the chat a little bit. Yes. Could you imagine if everyone did some good gestures back and forward and all around at Active Kindness Day? Seriously, I've just noticed it because I like put it out. I'm like, I noticed it. And I noticed that as soon as I did it back, I got more back and I was looking for it. Someone paid for sounds like I go through the drive up a lot, but but it's like someone paid for my sandwich behind me at Jimmy John's, and I had like a gift card, and I was like, well, give this gift card to the next person. It's like, it's just this kind of content. It's like, okay, if it's happy and satisfying, and you can be like, hey, this is a bid. Someone bid and they didn't even know me, right? So context, it's very logical. Okay, so context is the logical part. All points are connected and relevant to the main topic. So here's your defining problem, say, right? And here's the relevant main topic, and the tone and the flow of the text is consistent. Okay, that's the definition of that. So form a statement, an idea. The storyline and purpose of the conversation is deeper than just the problem. Okay, so here's the problem, but here's the storyline and here's the purpose of the conversation. And then we get into defining goals and positioning the content. Okay, which is next. Positioning the content. So context leads you to content. Isn't that confusing? so wait. Yeah. Backwards. Yeah. So content leads you to context. Okay. So control. Okay. So everyone I know wants to control others, and we want to control the people that want to control us. And then we want to like have them talk like we do, or all those kind of things, right? So we want to like, oh, I want you to be on the same page with me. Why can't you see my perspective? That's a black and white thinker if they can't. That's thinking error number 1. You can watch the thinking errors workshop, one of the most popular on there. And so it's like, okay, number 1, thinking error. Black and white thinking, can't see someone else's perspective. When you have thinking error stories, you want to control those thinking error stories. So I always say, how in the world do we mediate what happened? Okay. Because when I went through my undergrad and got certified as a mediator, it's like, how in the world do we mediate what happened? Well, we can't. I'm just going to tell you that right now. This is the problem with control. We can't mediate what happened. My childhood is different than my siblings' childhood. They just are because of birth order. There's the way things went down, the thinking or stories are someone else's delusional stories to you, but they're truth. So truth equals delusion to some people, right? See what I'm saying? It's really confusing. It's crazy because it's like, wait, that's not what happened. Well, yeah, no, that's how I feel, and that's what happened. Oh, wait, now you're just in defensiveness and you're just doing a bunch of defense triggers. So knowing your triggers and your stonewalling and defensiveness, stonewalling's, one of the 4 horsemen of Gottman, John Gottman, and the defensiveness is 2. So stonewalling and defensiveness is 2 out of the 4 horsemen. And so what happens is this hijacks words. You can say all you want, but if there's action of tone and body language, it hijacks words. If you say, oh my gosh, I would love to have a conversation with you. and it's worded as, oh, I got, yeah, I would love to have a conversation with you. Oh, and you're rolling your eyes and you're having a puppy. I can get animated, but we won't do that today. But and so all that hijacks the words, like, oh yes, I want to have a conversation with you. And so this other thing that hijacks the brain is experiences. So this is the problem when you have an experience with someone that you've talked to before, your teenagers, like, oh wait, they don't listen to me. Oh wait, they don't listen to me. Oh wait, they don't listen to me. They're listening to their friends instead. Experiences. And so wait, the knowledge, right? Oh, I have knowledge that this is what I'm supposed to do. So experiences in the brain, in the body, hijacks knowledge. We know a lot of things. So we know how to do this. But Gottman also says when that happens, we don't use our coping skills. We don't use our knowledge. And it's because the emotional brain hijacks the logical brain. We want wise mind and put it together. I know it's a lot. So just remember your facial and body language and your tone and your style over here. It all hijacks words. It all hijacks words. You can say whatever you want. So when, for example, if someone's giving you a lot of words and their action and their body language and their tone is not matching their words, and then we have to break. We have to take a break. We have to say, yeah, so I think I want to believe what you're saying is true, but through your actions, it's not coming through for me. And if that's a trigger for you of defensiveness or stonewalling when someone gets angry and they're saying things, right? If someone's yelling something, then you're going to get defensive. Knowing that that is a trigger for you, then you have to understand that. And that's what the fight, flight, or freeze does. And then it floods you. So we have to understand what that looks like. For you, everybody's different. So going through writing down your triggers, like this is what sends me into defensiveness. We have this really big myth that we're supposed to be very stoic and like that people's energy and their words or their actions aren't supposed to make us get defensive or stonewall. And that's just false. Our experiences trigger us. So I have a lot of people come up there and say, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to have people bother me. It shouldn't bother me. Shoulds. It shouldn't, I shouldn't react so much when people do this, and this. And it's like, well, that's just human. And I always say, are you a robot or are you an alien? Because you're not, you're human. You're sitting right in front of me with emotions and expectations and triggers and a fight, flight, or freeze in the back of our brain for a reason it keeps us alive. So clear and crucial. Okay, I'll look at the chat in a second. How crucial is your conversation? And I always just do a 1 to 10. I do 1 to 10 to everything. It's your subject of units. So unit 1 to 10. How crucial is this? So crucial meaning, just crucial, the word crucial. Of course, Crucial Conversations is the book I'll talk about in a second. But how crucial is it? Is it a time frame crucial? Is something that is really needing to be, set free? And especially if it's a work thing, if it's a deadline thing, if it's crucial. And then state the facts. Thinking errors are not facts. So be clear about your goal and your message, which we already reviewed. So stick to the point and keep it brief, and agree to a win-win and an action plan, but clear. So the biggest part about this is clear about your goal or your message, and then be clear and true to yourself about where your limits are. So you have to know what your boundaries are. And so if there's any defensiveness, we have to stop. So here's the rules, here's the facts, and here's what we need to do so we can agree on a plan. And it has to be very, very clear. Now that's really easy in an email, that you can do some bullet points, like this is what I see happening, and da 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 da. And this is now what do you see happening? Let's agree on a win-win action plan, and see if we can make it work, right? And then you meet, then you have a meeting, you have a crucial conversation. So Crucial Conversation, one of my favorite, but this will always be in my top 5 books. I have 5, 6, maybe top 5, but they don't, but really top 10 authors. There's multiple authors on this book. So same Peterson, but there's multiple authors. So Crucial Confrontations, I'm going to talk about in a minute, but when tools are for talking when stakes are high. So if it's the stakes are high and it needs to be done, and it's an 8 out of 10, you can kind of go through this book too, and see what you can do to help you have a crucial conversation. Okay, let's see. These will be, let's see. So someone says, how often, go back to bids a little bit. How often are the bids accepted? And I feel like a lot of the time returning bids or original bids are often written off using saying things like they want something, or they're just saying something back because I said something nice. Well, sometimes, yeah. So it's like, oh, it's like if there's an agenda about bids, or if it's like the whole point is you can say something nice back because that's a return, but it's also just a turn towards the bid instead of turn against. Turn against looks like stonewalling, ignoring, huffing and puffing, rolling your eyes like, really? Why did you say that? Or what I'm doing, instead of when someone asks a question. So how would I communicate to someone that is their words don't match their body language? So I don't. You don't communicate with someone that doesn't match. Their words don't match their language. You don't communicate. I promise. You just stop. You're like, okay, so this isn't working for me. And if we are not matching up, then how are you going to trust that person? What they're saying is they're going to follow through with. You can tell. So if body language, good question, because if body language doesn't match up, you quit the conversation, you take a break and come back to it, or you just end the conversation if you don't need to come back to it. But that's the tough thing about emails and texts and phone calls. You don't get that as much. But if you're screaming with a voice through the phone and they're like, I promise I'm doing this or I'm doing that, and so it's not matching. So anytime we're escalated in a fight, flight, or freeze, you are not present and it's not going to work. So there's a whole other component to that. Okay. Got that action plan going again, clear and crucial. So really, this is a pros and cons list too. You can get real clear with your pros and cons list, like how crucial it is, state the facts, the pros and the cons, things like that. Anything that gets you logical. This is a logical slide, clear numbers. Here's the facts. It's very logical. There's no emotion in this win-win action plan. So when you get clear, to me, it's the logical brain. So you get real critical of just facts. Okay, so back to this book, or forward to this book. So this is just a little tiny bit of Crucial Conversations, and of their 7 stepping stones. So you start with the heart. That's a whole chapter. Staying in the dialogue, making it safe. Don't get hooked by emotion, right? That's going to hijack. It's going to hijack you. So agree for mutual purpose. Separate facts from story. So agree on a clear action plan. So see how I've taken some of that, in so far in our our communication C's here. So get a clear action plan, separate the facts. So we have to, the most important too is really getting rid of your thinking or stories and separating, here's fact, here's this. And so get real logical with that. Okay, so 7, commitment. Okay. So strong belief in something, that to me is your value system. If you're going to have a commitment, you have to have a strong belief. So look at your belief systems, look in your value systems. I always check in, with those kind of things when you're doing something that's high priority or that's kind of passionate. You have to understand where that's coming from. And if there's a belief system of a moral code or a value system, then it's going to be a higher stake. Okay. And I talked about pros and cons already. I always do ABC lists with people. It's like, okay, what's your A? What would be your top A? Meaning magical, win-win, the most consistent, serious, conversation that was just a win-win for you, how you would absolutely want it to go. And then here's B, and then here's C. So always have a B plan and always have a C plan, but still a win-win. They're all still win-wins. Okay. A D plan is lose-lose. We're out of here. This is not going to happen, but that might be a win-win because instead of, screaming at each other. List pros and cons, know your values. So that's the commitment part. If you're committed, you'll keep the emotion down and just have a plan, and you'll list more of those things on paper, and you'll have time to go through it. And that's where I'm like, I love having that in front of you when you're having a crucial conversation or any kind of connection, communication. And especially if you're on the phone, you need to make a phone call and you tell this person something. Hey, if you can't meet in person, then have those things in front of you. Keeps you logical. Okay, correspond. So now you're ready to correspond. Yay. How do you feel about that? How do you get into a correspondence with someone that you don't match up with? If you give bids and they always turn against your bids. Well, so this is the thing, is about getting into tough things of corresponding now. So say you're not on the same page, you don't have the same style of bidding, right? And you're turned against with those bids. Now in a marriage or in a partnership, that actually ends in all of their research, it shows that the more turning against those bids, it actually ends relationships and marriages. So all I can say to you is stay in a safe space, not place, space. So if it's not safe for you and you keep bidding and you keep bidding and you keep bidding for something, then you need to reevaluate your boundaries and then go into boundary work, right? So probing and restating, oh, I know my triggers. This person keeps on ignoring my bid. Well, that's going to trigger you because that's going to make you feel worthless, small, invisible, all those secondary emotions, and that's going to trigger you. So it's going to be really hard for you to be assertive when you're triggered. You can't be assertive when you're triggered. You just can't. And I'll show you that in a minute. It's impossible. You go into fight, flight, or freeze, which is fight, which is aggression, or flee, which is passive aggressive, or flee or flight, or freeze, which is stonewalling, which is passive behavior, and you'll just shut off and you'll just be a yes, ma'am, or sir to everything, and then that just turns you into a passive communicator. So it's not assertive. So assertive connection is that correspondence. So really it's like, here's my limit of my triggers and what my boundary is in the correspondence. If something gets heated, defensive, body language, unsafe, it stops. So that's how you stay logical. Yeah, not the easiest. Okay. So, but this is how we start out with seeking to understand. This is habit 5, which I promise you, if we did this in everything we did, we would not have the problems in our relationships that we do. So seeking to understand first before you understood is, here's the 5 little steps inside of that habit from Covey. So Steve Covey says, okay, this is how you do it. You have to have listening to understand. You have to reflect. You have to listen to understand. You have to ask questions maybe, but seek to understand first. You have to have a desire. You have to have, remember I talked about values. You have to know where you love and where your love and belonging is, your value in that. And then empathetically listen, reflect, repair, body language, all that. And then you have to have mutual understanding, green light, you can go. Then now you're ready to have the conversation. But that's really tough to get to 5. So it's almost like you can say at that point, well, since we're not on the same page and since we don't have mutual understanding, we're gonna have to come back to this. That's a conversation. That's communicating right there. And so you have to come back. It's a yellow light. It's not a green light. You have to say, yeah, this isn't working for me. I feel like we're going to have to come back to this after lunch. And those are all those assertive trainings with boundaries. So, but you got to have a desire. You got to have a space of trust. So it's kind of repetitive of what I've kind of gone over. So 9, courteous. I don't know. I just had to come up with a C word that meant kindness. It's pretty self-explanatory, but super hard to do sometimes. Respectful understanding with consideration. You can either be rude or you can be polite. And there's pretty much nowhere in between. So you can back up and say, oh, I didn't mean it that way. Okay, let's start over. That was a little bit of rude. That was a little rude. I want to be more courteous in this. Let's get to this kind of speech. I tell parents, and I've said, it's like, okay, so what, instead of yelling, I'm just like, okay, I want to yell at you right now. So if parents are like, so then that's what you say instead. I want to yell at you right now. So I don't really want to do that. So I'm going to back off. I'm going to do this, and we're going to have to come back to this. And that's the big key. As you've noticed, it's all about a time out. Statistically, you just need 10 minutes to 30 minutes to calm your actual nervous system. You need 30 minutes at the most. And it's not to reload if you take a break. You breathe, you go for a walk, you do something, you write down your pros and cons, you write down some sort of action that you want to accomplish, and then you go back into the conversation. So solutions to problems, this is where you'd have some closure, okay? A win-win, right? A clarity, you have faster conflict problem solving, you see others' perspective, you have love and belonging and healing, you have mutual understanding. That's kind of all closure. You have a greater understanding of what the problem is and how to solve it, and then go back to the drawing board if it doesn't work. That's all you can do. And with family and kids, and you kind of have to go back to the drawing board like 5 billion times. I think I've gone back to the drawing board with my 7 blended kids and my foster kids and my it's just going back to the drawing board all the time, because it might not always work, but that's a win-win to me, right? That's hopefully. Okay. Let's look at the chat. Anything else? We're going to comment and go through these handouts for a minute. That's number 10. Let's see, be aware of personal. Don't assume that they are rude. They may be reflecting. Okay. Yeah. Reflecting, but if it comes out rude or disrespectful, then that's the point of seeing someone else's perspective. Solving this, so your work, your attitude, but if you want to be a bigger primary change, work on your paradigm shift. So your paradigm shift is, I just took a course, my undergraduate course, with 7 habits. I actually got certified and trained in 7 habits. And so a long time ago. And so, so yeah, the paradigm shift is that, to me, is that I can see someone else's perspective. And that is huge. You don't have to agree with it. It's just seeing it. So I see to the perspective. And that changes your attitude. That's growth mindset. That's a whole bunch of things. I still have people entering and getting kicked out. Okay, so let's go over for a minute the barriers to connection and closure, kind of answering a lot of those questions of like, what happens when someone's not on the same page, or when we're conflicting with mediating what happened, the story. You'll get so many different perspectives on it. But so remember, actions hijack words, okay? So because that messes up your trust, and experience hijacks knowledge. That messes up this is a barrier to connection and closure, okay? So I'm a big attachment theorist, and I'm trained in EMDR attachment. So I do trauma work through attachment, through EMDR. And so your attachment style, personality style is huge. It's just, they're different. Everyone's different, but your attachment style is anxious or avoidant or disorganized, is going to go into barriers of why you trust and why you don't trust, and why you're anxious about it. So that's a whole different subject. Difference in value systems. Can you argue with someone's value system? No, you cannot. And you cannot project your value system. That's the biggest thing I see in families and connection and in couples, of like, well, I'm trying to push my value system of how I parent onto, the spouse. Okay, so how do you get on the same page with a value system of how to parent, or what you're going to eat for dinner, or how it's a value system. So when I see a couple and you're going to do some work on that, and you're going to get on the same page with your value system, well, I understand I can do this, and this is what so staying up late or watching TV until 2 a.m, or my kids go to bed and the kitchen is closed and the lights are out. That's a value system. So what you do with your time, energy, money. So that's difficult. There's some barriers to that, but that doesn't mean you can't see each other's perspective and get on the same page. So flooding, remember, fight, flight, or freeze, that's a barrier. You go into the back of the brain, and you're going to be a very non-present person. You're going to be flooded. It doesn't work. You have to stop. You will not get anywhere. There's no teaching, no communication. There's nothing that's going to happen. Thinking errors, if you want that workshop, it's on YouTube. Root issues is hurt and trauma. So trauma is in a root issue. So if there's deep resentment is in the root, for example, trauma, mental health issues, relational trauma, developmental trauma, health trauma, like all kinds of traumas in the root, that can be a barrier to connection, right? So you have to heal some of these things so you can connect and have closure. And that's two people too. If there's hurt in both sides, then 5 steps to differences. This was in my marriage, couples, not marriage, it's called Couples 101. So couples workshop. This was one slide from there. on how to deal with differences. This can be with anyone, right? So this is another barrier. Like, okay, here's my differences. This is how I parent. This is what I want. This is what you don't. So pick your most important things of like make a list of important, scale 1 to 10, how your values match up. That's from Chapman's 4 Seasons of Marriage, page 13. Another one. So I talked about attachment. That's a barrier. So this is just a little bit on Sue Johnson's attachment. You can watch her YouTube. She's one of my favorite researchers on couples. I've got her reference at the back of this. So Hold Me Tight and Love Sense, 2 books of hers. So just a little bit of attachment. Understanding attachment is essential. So here's your tools. I talked a lot about timeouts. So 20 minutes to 24 hours. You need that. Get out of flooding. Okay. Step back, take a breath, observe, practice mindfulness, and then practice what works. Be emotionally intelligent, secondary emotions, use imagery to relax and not to reload if you're going to take a timeout. So that's how to do a timeout. Okay. It's just a little note on that. And we've got like 1 minute. We'll take some comments or questions in the chat. So here's how to empathetically listen. Focus on the speaker. If you get stuck, just repeat it. I could talk all day long about how to, when someone bids, how to respond to that. Like I said, you don't advise. This is really important. Reply, solve, fix, change, judge, agree or disagree, or analyze, or question. When you're empathetically listening, you don't do any of those things. And we jump to all of those things first. A lot of the time. We don't question someone's emotions because that's empathy. Empathetic listening is through the emotion only, not the event. So if you question in an empathetic listening, conversation, you're not empathetically listening. You are questioning someone's emotion or how they see it, and that's where we go wrong. And then we judge and we want to solve and we want to reply and we want to agree or disagree. No, there's no disagreeing or agreeing. There's just empathetic listening. So you reflect. That's it. So you just repeat back. You don't agree or disagree. You just do that. And that's really hard to continuously practice. But it takes 2 people, again, that aren't triggered to do that. So do you see how hard this gets? Don't correct the emotion. Just make statements. That's my number 1 thing I do in parenting. A lot of stuff is do not correct the child. You just make a statement. So, so you shouldn't do this. You should do this. That's correction. And it's also should. It's also thinking error. But here's the statement. I see that you're doing this. I see that you're stomping your feet. Instead of saying, stop stomping your feet. I see that you're stomping your feet. So different. Yeah. So that's a little emotional coaching. Okay. Passive aggressive. You can just look through these while we're taking questions. Anything that